Yo, what is up, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, this show where I recap the NBA games from the night. We had some pretty good games tonight, some fun events, including Dirk Nowitzki got his jersey retired in Dallas after they got a win over the Warriors. So a lot of stuff was happening in the NBA today, including the first game that I do want to talk about. Kyrie Irving made his return to basketball for the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not going to get into any of the vaccination stuff in particular. Kind of just want to focus on this game and how kind of the outlook is for their season. So going into this one, I didn't expect anything too crazy from Kyrie. It's the first time he's played all season. I wasn't expecting him to go out and drop like 40 or anything like that, but he did have a pretty solid game. He started off kind of slow, but ended up with 22, 3, and 4, including some buckets down the stretch that really helped this team kind of get that win over the Indiana Pacers. Kevin Durant had 39, 8, and 7. James Harden with 18, 5, and 6. But of course, the focus mostly was on Kyrie Irving, as well as a little bit on Lance Stevenson, who went berserk. He had 20 points in the first quarter. His first game back in Indiana since signing that 10-day with them. I hope they keep him just because it feels right to see Lance playing well in Indiana, but we'll see if that is the case since they are kind of planning on blowing it up. But overall, Kyrie Irving, while he didn't have a phenomenal game, he had a solid one. Really just kind of the thing that you look at is his impact on the game just by being on the court, because you can't sag off of any of the three guys. You can't sag off Kyrie, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. And when you're able to not just sag off Durant and Harden, that's already one thing. But when you have this third threat in Kyrie Irving, especially for the Pacers, who don't really have many good guard defenders, at least not now, with half their team kind of out for this game, there's not much you can do. And just the threat of having Kyrie out there, it was really easy when he was on the court to space the floor out. And there were multiple plays to start off this game where the first play, they ran it for Kyrie Irving to try and get him a bucket. But after that, Kyrie did a great job of kind of being a facilitator, and mainly him and Harden working the ball to Kevin Durant down low, kind of in like that mid post around the free throw line where he could hit a bunch of jumpers. And Kyrie's ability to drive and kick out to that, or drive and then just kind of shovel it off to him in the mid range, or even just stand on the perimeter and force them to really have to go close to Kyrie Irving, not be able to double team Durant. It was huge for this Nets offense. They looked great. They scored 129 points, given they did give up 121 to a Pacers team that, like I mentioned, was missing a lot of guys. They did have Sabonis, who had 32, 12, and 10, but they were missing Malcolm Brogdon, Karis LeVert, of course, TJ Warren, who's been out forever. They were missing Jeremy Lamb, so they were missing some guys. Lance Stevenson was really the big scorer for them in this one with 30 points alongside Sabonis. But overall, you want to see their defense tighten up, but just on the offensive side of the ball, to have Kyrie Irving and have him be as an offensive threat out there, it was huge, and it made this Brooklyn Nets team look really scary. They were really hard to guard, not just because of Kyrie Irving, but because of the way even just him being available and on the court impacts the other team's game plan. There's so many ways you have to try and game plan around that big three because of how great they are and how gifted they all are offensively, that it just makes things so difficult, especially, like I mentioned, for a Pacers team that's pretty beat up. Now, of course, looking forward, this isn't going to be a consistent thing because it's only road games. So it's going to be really interesting to see how different the offense looks. And I think that'll be one of the biggest keys kind of into how this Nets season kind of looks going forward. Of course, if Kyrie gets vaccinated and he's able to suit it for home games, it becomes a consistent thing. But until then, he's only playing road games. And so it'll be interesting to see how game plans shift and how the offense looks differently. And if that kind of messes up their cohesion a little bit, if, say, for example, they've got like this great offensive game scoring 130 against the Pacers, and then they go into their next home game, whatever that is, and they've got to kind of relearn the system or kind of shift back into that mode because now they don't have Kyrie Irving out there on the perimeter creating shots for others, driving and kicking, just breaking down the defense with his incredible ability to handle the ball. A lot of different things are going to kind of go into this. So I'm super interested to see how this works out. But at least for this first game where Kyrie was here, things looked phenomenal. The question is, how good will they be without Kyrie Irving? And when they go into a playoff series, if that does come around and Kyrie still isn't vaccinated, how do they shift things? What is their mentality going into it? Is it, okay, well, these home games don't matter that much, or we have to try more in these home games, game plan more because we don't have Kyrie Irving? It's just a lot of very weird kind of variables to it. And now that he has made his return, it's going to be really interesting to see how this Nets team operates. I'm excited about it. With this first game, like I mentioned, their offense did look good, but we'll see how they look at home. And if that kind of creates some inconsistencies, it's interesting to be seen. It's going to be a big challenge for head coach Steve Nash, and we'll see what he's able to do. Moving on from that game, I want to talk a little bit about Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. I made that whole video talking about how Joel Embiid needs some help, and once again, I'm here to say that Joel Embiid needs some help because he is going on an absolute tear. He scored 30 plus points in almost every single one of his games going back to like December 15th, I believe, and even then, that's just one game in the middle of two more 30-point games. So he's just kind of on a rampage doing what he did last season, blowing teams out. Not necessarily blowing teams out because the Sixers team isn't quite as good as that last one, but he himself is dominating teams offensively, defensively, whether he's shooting mid-range jumpers, he's working down low in the post, whatever he is doing, Joel Embiid is dominating in that. Something that was really interesting that the Sixers did in this game was they were down by a bit, and so Doc Rivers ran a lineup of Furkan Korkmaz, who is a small forward. At the two, they had Tobias Harris, who is like 6'8", 6'9". You had Georges Niang, who is typically a power forward, and then they ran Drummond and Embiid out there as the 5. And it worked. Like they were making a comeback. It was genuinely a decent lineup out there against the Magic. I know, it's the Magic, but just the fact that that big ball lineup worked in any NBA game is kind of insane. The fact that Doc Rivers even tried it is even more insane, and I thought it was hilarious. So shout out to the Sixers, I guess, for trying that because it got them the win in the end. So the Sixers, while they do need to kind of make some moves, they are getting some wins against teams that they're supposed to. I expect them to be pretty active around the trade deadline. Joel Embiid, like I mentioned, needs some help, whether that's trading Ben Simmons, trading Tobias Harris, or even just making some smaller moves and trying to bring in more 3-and-D type players next to Joel Embiid. Whatever it is, I'm excited to see what the Sixers do because I like Joel Embiid a lot. And I think if the Sixers could kind of just find a groove, rattle off a few straight, I mean, they're 5 games over 500 at this point, and the Eastern Conference is pretty wide open in terms of standings. Like, they're only a few games back of the 1 seed. So if they're able to kind of rattle games off, if they make a trade dealing off Ben Simmons, bring in some pretty good complementary pieces, this Sixers team could quickly rise up the standings, and I think Embiid's MVP case could get pretty loud if they manage to make their way back up towards that 1st seed. We'll see if they're able to do it on the Sixers or the Magic side of the ball. Franz Wagner had 15, double-double for Wendell Carter Jr., 19 for Mo Bamba, 26, 5, and 7 for Cole Anthony. They just didn't have the offense to match what the Sixers were doing. It happens. Moving on from that one, we have the Golden State Warriors versus the Dallas Mavericks. Of course, kind of the big story in this game was afterwards. They did Dirk's jersey retirement, and that was an awesome ceremony. It got me thinking about Russell Westbrook's eventual jersey retirement ceremony and how exciting that's going to be, how cool that is. I really want to be there when that happens. I'm not quite sure it will happen because I'm sure it's going to be expensive as hell, and I live on the East Coast, not in Oklahoma, so a lot of variables in the way, but it just kind of got me thinking about that, had me nostalgic, and it was cool to see Dirk get that moment. He deserves it. That statue that they made this kind of little replica model of a statue they're going to put in front of the stadium. It needs a little bit of work. It was kind of weird because he's like shooting and it had like, instead of just a ball in his hand, it had 3 balls like connected and it looked weird. So I think they should just go back to the 1 ball. I think that would be perfect, but it's Mark Cuban, it's the Mavericks. It's up to them. But the ceremony, while it was really cool, in the game, the Mavericks did get the win. It would have been pretty awkward if they got a loss in this one, if they got blown out somehow, and then they had that crazy ceremony. But instead, they held the Warriors to one of their worst performances of the season, only 82 points. Curry was there. They had Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole. So they've got their guys, Draymond Green, and they just stunk. Steph Curry in particular, in his last 2 games, he's shooting 8 for 41 from the field, which is awful. He only had 14 points after having 9 last game. He did have 9 rebounds and 5 assists, but ultimately Steph Curry was just bad. Tonight, you had 17 from Andrew Wiggins. Gary Payton II continues to be a really solid player with 11 and 11, but really just kind of the fall off of Steph Curry. He looked like by far and away the MVP favorite to start off the season, and now he's really kind of come back down to earth, having super inconsistent performances here and there, and now the MVP race feels wide open. And even then, the Western Conference feels kind of wide open when you look at the standings, because the Warriors kind of look like to be a team that could run away with it alongside the Phoenix Suns, but now it's those two that are tied, and you've got the Jazz only 1.5 back after their win over the Denver Nuggets tonight, which I'm not going to talk about because I did not have the chance to watch that game, but Jokic did have a big game, but shout out to the Jazz for getting the win. Overall, kind of just in this one, the Mavericks just did a good job of really stopping them. Luka Doncic had 26, 7, and 8. He did tweak his ankle at the end, but he was on the court for Dirk's ceremony. He said that he was fine. He just kind of twisted it. As someone who has bad ankles, I get it. It happens, but overall, this is just a good win for the Mavericks. We're kind of starting to find a little bit of footing. They're 2 games above 500, so maybe this kind of puts them in a little bit of a groove. For the Warriors, they need Steph back. The fact that they've been able to win games without Steph Curry playing very well is huge for them. But they do need Steph Curry to kind of be Steph Curry to win a championship. Whether Clay coming back kind of helps that a little bit along, or we'll kind of just this slump will end at some point soon. Who knows when? But it's Steph Curry. He's not going to stay down for long. Next, we have the Toronto Raptors beating the Milwaukee Bucks for the second time this year, 117 to 111. In this one, now there was no Giannis Antetokounmpo, so that is definitely a factor that plays into it. But overall, just a good win for the Raptors, who look like they're going to be a fun team, whether they're going into the play-in tournament or they're fighting for kind of that 7-8 seed, which I guess now is the play-in tournament, so I don't know why I said that. Anyways, this Raptors team feels like one that could really give a team fits in the first round. I'm not saying they're going to beat one of those top contenders in the first round, but they've just got so much length, so much defense. They really kind of they play physical. They're a team that I don't think any team will want to face in that first round, just because they're going to make things really difficult when, if you're a 1 or 2 seed, you're supposed to be having a pretty easy first round schedule. This team, like I mentioned, they're physical. They've got a lot of length. They can score the ball. Pascal Siakam had 33 in this one. I love Siakam as a small ball center for this lineup. I think it's perfect for them. I like that they've been running it. It's something that I advocated for earlier in the season, so I'm glad that they ran that tonight. Gary Trent Jr. and Fred VanVleet have been playing well. Fred VanVleet in particular, I think should be an all-star. OG Anunoby with 22 in this game. So all around great performance from the Raptors. I just need to show them some love because I feel like I've kind of been slacking on that. So shout out to the Raptors. Great game from them. Finally, of course, I'll talk about the Thunder game. This was an ugly game to start off. The Thunder only scored 10 points in the first quarter, and they had the same amount of turnovers as points at the end of that quarter. Shea had 19, 2, and 5, 14, 15, and 6 from Josh Giddey, who really was the player of the game. A couple of guys that just came back from COVID protocols, namely you had Shea, you had Darius Bazley, kind of looked hit or miss on the offensive end of the ball. Trey Mann as well. Jeremiah Robinson Earl missing some shots that he typically makes. It kind of just felt like a game where they were still trying to get back into their rhythm. I'm sure they'll be able to get back into it soon, but this first game out, they kind of all looked rusty, especially handling the ball. Like I mentioned, 10 turnovers in the first quarter is never a good way to win a basketball game, so they're going to get it together. They'll be fine, but it was just kind of a weird one. As for the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards had 22, 5, and 2. It's a really solid game from him, some really nice shot making. 17, 6, and 3 from Karl Anthony Towns. D'Lo really struggled with only 6, 2, and 3. He really wasn't even that visible on the court as I was watching. I forgot he was playing some of the time, mainly because Patrick Beverley next to him in the backcourt had 20 points, including 5 threes. He was cooking us. He even had one where he shot it and turned around immediately and then just splashed it like it was a 2K greenlight animation. From Patrick Beverley, that's how much we were getting cooked from the three-point line tonight. 16 for Jalen Noel, who had a really solid game off the bench. This Timberwolves team is really fun. I'm excited to see them play. If you didn't know, I'm going to OKC, leaving today, I guess, at least for me on the East Coast. As you're seeing this video, most of you see these in the morning. So today, for most of you as you're seeing this, I'm excited. Going to go see them play the Wolves and the Nuggets. Should be a couple of fun games. I'm going to vlog those, so let me know whether you'd rather see one big vlog or a couple shorter vlogs in the comment section below. Yeah, so those are my thoughts on the games that I was able to watch a little bit of today. Let me know what you thought about the games. What were your takeaways from today? What are your takeaways from the Kyrie thing? Do you agree with me that when Kyrie plays, they show a lot of the flashes of their dominance and that it's kind of going to be a weird situation? Or do you think that this whole thing's just going to fall apart? Let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.